Okay. Good day, everyone. Welcome to our International Climate Change Development Initiative. So today we'll be talking about women because this month celebrated International Women's Day on March 8th, and the theme for this year was Choose to Challenge. So the theme we'll be talking about today is Choose to Challenge Women and the Environment. And with us today is Miss Amina Yahaya. Miss Amina is an international development practitioner with focus around issues of government, democracy, policy, politics, elections, and peace building. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts in English Language from Usmanu Danfodio University, Sokoto. Ms. Yahaya gained fame in Nigeria when she became the first female students' union president of her institution at the age of 21 and the second Northern Nigerian for 30 years. Her position has brought her instant fame and made her role for other females in universities in northern Nigeria and beyond. She is on the board of Young Women in Politics Forum, whose aim is to mobilize more young women to participate in politics and governance. She does this through her advocacy role to the National Female Students Association of Nigeria, providing guidance and mentorship, particularly on how young women can bridge the female leadership gap in Nigeria by joining mainstreaming politics. Thank you very much for joining us, Miss Amina Yahaya. Please, can you just kindly introduce yourself once more in case I left out anything?
Thank you very much, Drew. I think you did a great job there at introducing me, so I don't think there's anything left to add to that. Thank you for
no,
having me today.
thank you for coming. So with us today is also Verlaine-Diane. Please, can she? Yes, hi. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I hear you, but I can see. Can you see me? Okay, perfect. I
Yes,
hear
I
you.
can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
And I
Yes, I
see my
can.
sister
Thank you for
Amina
joining
is
us.
here. Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, Verlaine-Diane is an international strategist and public policy professional serving at the United Nations Women Executive Office on global African strategic priorities. She devotes her efforts to building cross-sectoral partnership and multi-stakeholder strategic engagement. Her efforts are rooted in policy, human rights, women and youth empowerment, inclusion, diversity, equality, and social justice. Verlaine is the founding coordinator of the African Women Leaders Network, a joint African Union and UN Women's Initiative established to scale up women's leadership in Africa. She is actively involved in advancing young women's rights and is the founder of the impact initiative ZARAs Dream Inc., which supports young women from vulnerable and low-income communities, empowering themselves by tapping into their full potential. ZARA's Dream Inc. is on a mission to donate 100,000 power jackets by 2030 to rising women, young women as part of professional attire support across the world. Thank you very much for joining us, Verlaine.
Thank
Would you like to introduce yourself more in case I left out anything?
you. Thank you, my sister. You did so well, as Amina said. I'm
Yeah.
just giving a disclaimer. I'm joining from early New York City, so thank you
Okay.
for inviting me to the team. Of course, I'm happy to see my sister Amina here, and it's exciting that we'll be able to discuss how we choose to challenge and how we're building positive change. One life at a time.
Okay. Thank you very much. So moving on to the crux of today's matter, like I explained before, we'll be talking about women, and this month celebrated International Women's Day on March 8th, and the theme for this month's International Women's Day was Choose to Challenge. Now, going to my first question. So what does Choose to Challenge mean to you both? I would like to start with Amina. So what does Choose to Challenge mean to you?
Thank you, Drew. Choose to challenge is I think it's very personal to me. For me, it means saying no to every form of discrimination, every form of treatment that puts me down based on my gender, challenging stereotypes, and saying no to harmful cultural practices. Choosing to challenge for me means the fact that I can be whatever I want to be, despite the fact that I'm female, and that people do not use my gender as a basis for determining what I can be or what I cannot be. So I think that Choose to Challenge being the theme this year for International Women's Day is very, very important. And like I said, it's very personal to me based on the experiences that I have had growing up until this moment, due to a lot of sociocultural factors, and at the same time, related it to how the society sees women generally, and especially young women. So choosing to challenge for me means that I can be whatever I want to be,
You want
and
to
my
be.
gender
So
does not determine my limits.
exactly. So flowing from what you said, have you personally faced any barrier because of your gender?
A lot, a lot of barriers. Sometimes it's the most basic things, it's the most ridiculous things, It's when you are trying to assert yourself in an argument and then someone shrugs it off by saying that, oh, you're a woman, that's why you're saying that. Or, oh no, I won't waste my time arguing with a woman. And especially if you grew up in northern part of Nigeria where I grew up, it's something that you experience every single day, in schools, in the markets, in the communities, in places of work. You experience that all the time. People just feel like because you're a female, you shouldn't talk too much, you shouldn't be too loud, you shouldn't be too outspoken, you shouldn't be out there, you shouldn't always demand so much for your rights. It's just almost like you are in this box that the society has placed you, and you're not supposed to come out of that box. And you coming out of that box means that people would see you in a totally different light and assume that you are one of those people who is, that would brand you as someone who is either too loud or who doesn't know when to be quiet. So it's something that we experience every single day. We continue to experience it, but then we continue to refuse to accept it. I mean, the fact that it
Yes.
continues to happen over and over again doesn't mean that we have to accept it and make it normal. It's not normal, and we would never accept this as something that is normal.
Okay, so just one more question before I move on to Berlin. Flowing from what you also said, as then the because of that, has it now shaped who you are today because of those restrictions you have faced? Can you say that it's because of probably one of the things that has made you to become who you are today is because of the barriers you have faced in your life?
Yes, I agree. And specifically talking about when I was in the university and I became the student union president, the first female in my school. And I saw how that was a big deal for a lot of people, like how does a girl become a president in a school in the far north, in the seat of the caliphate, where you have the sultan? I went online and I saw a whole lot of comments. Some of them, there were positives actually, but there were also negatives that really made me feel bad. But I decided not to focus on those negatives. And so at some point, I had to stop reading the comments I was
The
seeing on social
comments.
media, because people would go as far as saying, oh, they need to shut that school down. How can a young girl, a little girl, be the president in a school? Are there no men in the school, and things like that? And for me, that was the things that pushed me towards the work that I'm currently doing. I feel like there's a lot of potential in encouraging young women to join mainstream politics. Because while being the student union president, I also had to do the extra to ensure that people do not say that, oh, when we had a female, what did she do?
Yes.
So it was like
Yes.
double
Yes.
challenge for me. We've been
Yes.
having men for a long time. Now we have a female, but I do not want to do
Exactly.
something that will make people say, oh, when we had a female, she did nothing. So why should we support women? So it wasn't very easy, but that for me was the major pushing point for me on why I continue to support things that have to do generally with women, and particularly young women. These experiences have shaped my interest in a lot of things today.
Thank you very much, Amina. Now, it looks like Berlin has so much to say, so I'll give you the floor.
Our sister Amina has brought fire. She has brought fire to the discussion, fire to my own heart. I'm here behind tweeting, so if you see my head down,
It's
quoting
fine.
what Amina has shared, so that we amplify. And yeah, I'll let you perhaps ask the question, my sister, and then complement what our
Okay.
sister Amina mentioned. Yes.
So, what does choose to challenge mean to you, and what are the barriers you have faced because of your gender?
Yeah. No, I have to say, I just mentioned our sister Amina just laid it out perfectly. And that's worrisome that I recognize my own experience in Amina's experience. Why is it worrisome? It's worrisome because it means that there's a certain structure, regardless of where we are. I mean, I'm also a young African woman, but I'm currently in New York. Amina is in northern Nigeria. Our lives sing the same song of not accepting biases and barriers, but unfortunately still reflects having to go through that. And that's why I'm saying it's worrisome, because of course my experience of what does it mean to choose to challenge is very similar to what my sister Amina is saying. It means to me being in environments in which I'm being molded to be someone else. Environment, as our sister has mentioned, once you get to a position of leadership, your own leadership and your own character as a human being is questioned on the basis of your gender, a gender you never chose to come with. You arrive the way we do, and then the world tells you this is good and this is bad, and this is where you have to fit. You don't fit here. You're a young woman. You should not be president of a school. And those are experiences that myself experiences, younger and even now, and how do we overcome? I think this is really the question. It's more than how do we overcome. I think we've reached a point where our generation, that's why I'm so proud and so happy and excited to see our generation. And we stand on the work that older women have done. But I think our generation is even taking it a step further by completely refusing to accept the abnormal. And I like what our sister Amina said, once you're seen as choosing to challenge, which shouldn't even be choosing to challenge. Technically, it should be choose to leave. That's all we're doing. We're just living, Every morning I wake up as a young woman, and I just want to live. I just want to breathe. I just want to dream. And I want for my sisters to do the same. The problem is there are structures around us that repress us, that keep us from breathing, that keep us from dreaming, and that keep us from just showing up as our best selves. Because if you show up as your best self, oh, who do you think you are? And who brought you here? And all this type of nonsense. I call it nonsense. And I think our generation of young women are literally not accepting. And you can see it in the strength of language that our sister Amina has mentioned. You can see it in the fire that we're bringing when we're talking about those discussions. And we're not just talking, we're really building it. On my side, as you mentioned, I launched ZARAs Dream a year ago so that we're intentional for young women to live their dreams and not live their fears. Because every day we're being planted with seeds of fears, like Amina mentioned, negative comments. Why is she in the school? Da, 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 and if you start believing those things, it's like seeds. It grows, then it plants trees and roots, and you can't move anymore. So it's very important for us to be intentional on how we address that. And for me, I choose to challenge by being in solidarity with my sisters, meaning that when one of us wins, we all win. There's no such thing as scarcity mindset. Oh, but if she wins, what about me? No, because we're all bringing our own lights, and we need to stop thinking this way, that if she wins, I'm losing. We need to be in solidarity with each other. The second point, the way that we choose to challenge, as Sister Amina has mentioned, is by refusing categorically, early morning, to accept the abnormal. And it means that also standing up to the power structure in front of us, even if those power structures are our families, our mentors, the people surround us, because people are, you absorb the abnormal, and then it becomes normal and you forget what normal is. And so refusing the abnormal. And the third one is taking proactive leadership roles in whatever public space we are, because unfortunately, when you remain in private, when your voice is silent, you live in this fear. At least we're taking the bold actions to speak up. It's not easy. I mentioned it. You get a lot of backlash, so you have to have a very tough skin, lots of people who surround you to be able to take it forward, allies, mentors, friends, families, and continue. So I think that's why we choose to challenge, and this generation is boldly taking it. And I see even younger women. I've just entered my 30s. I see even like 15, 20 years old who will shift the way things work. And to end, I just want to share that patriarchy has no gender. We also have to stop to think that the people who maintain the system are only women, are only men, because some women do too. I've been in field missions and I have seen it, So we need to reassess our own internal biases as women, and not try to reproduce and retransmit trauma also to the younger women who are coming, thinking if I suffered, then you need to suffer. To me, this is a big no. So that's it.
Thank you so much. That is a lot to take in. And from what both of you have said, something that also probably came to my mind was the fact that the mental health is also very key here. Because if you're a woman and you're going into like politics, you're going into a male-dominated field, you have to have a strong mind. Because the mental health, because a lot of you're gonna have trolls, like what happened to Amina. So that also, so you also have to have like a good support system around you, because if you don't have a good support system, then you might end up crash landing. So I think that's another vital thing that we have to take into consideration when we are going forth, because it's not as easy as it is. Thank you very, very much. So I'm moving on to my next question. So you basically answered the second question I was going to answer, but and that has to do with your career and personal life. So we have seen how the gender bias has played both in your personal and your career life. So now, generally speaking, what is the role of women in our environment? How important is it to mainstream female gender? So Amina, to you.
Okay, I think the role of women in the environment cannot be overemphasized, and it's related to all sectors that you can think of. Whether it's from the home front, even whether it's in the field of security, whether it's in the field of healthcare, whether it's in the field of education. The role of women is it's always glaring. If we look at the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation, for example, we've seen how a lot of women are at the forefront of providing support and treatment and caring for people who have been infected by this virus. In the area of security, also, although there's a very minimal number of women who are involved in peace processes generally around the world, but we have seen how a lot of uh, write-ups have shown that there's a lot of impact in terms of including women in issues that have to do with security. When we want to get long-lasting solutions to security issues, when women voices are involved in this process, the results are better achieved. So, when you look at the environment, when you talk about climate change, when you talk about the change in weather conditions over the time, women are also at the receiving end. So that's why it's important that as long as we are having these conversations about making recommendations and how we want to solve this solution, women voices need to be included. There's no way that we can talk about these things without mainstreaming gender, because the way that a situation affects men is different from how it affects women. And I'll give you an example with Nigeria, for example. In the beginning, when we had this challenge with the pandemic and all of that, and we had a committee, a presidential committee that was almost like 90% men, we saw how lots of challenges were coming up in the beginning because there were not enough women to give a gender perspective to all of the regulations that were being made at the time. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. But if we had women in those committees, some of the challenges that were experienced probably wouldn't have happened. Somebody wrote on social media at that time about how his wife was in labor and there was a enforcement of lockdown, and it was really a challenge for him getting her to the hospital. Now, that's like a very basic example I'm trying to give, but look at it in a different picture. If this committee was at least 50-50 in terms of men and women in that committee, the women would have been able to say, okay,
Exactly.
while we are giving these restrictions, there has to be some exceptions. What if there is this situation? What if there's situation B? What if this occurs? What if that occurs? How are we going to address this in such a way that nobody suffers at the end of the day? But it's something that you continue to see over and over again. For me, what I find most irritating is when, for example, you see a committee of 5 people and you see one female, and then when you say, oh, this committee is not balanced, and they tell you, oh, we included one female. You included
One.
what?
One.
One out of 5 is not, it doesn't make
Not
sense. It doesn't
balanced.
look good. It's not balanced, and it's not even something that you should be proud to put out there and say that you have struck a balance. But it's something that we see all the time. And when people complain, you would get a lot of comments like, oh, you people are always complaining about how you want everything to be the same all the time. You're not always satisfied with things. But of course, if we're not satisfied with how you are doing things, we are going to talk, because at the end of the day, we would be at the receiving end. If you're talking about something that affects us in a different way, and you don't have enough women to talk about our experiences, how sure are we that at the end of the day, the recommendations would address those challenges that we
Yes,
face? So
exactly.
it's absolutely important. Gender mainstreaming has become something that is just I think it's just the way of life. Like, you cannot just help but include it in everything, whether it's in terms of policies, whether it's in terms of recommendations, and in terms of any way that you want to look at it. There's just no way that you would not mainstream gender into these discussions. And of course, like I mentioned initially, the role that women play in the environment is very crucial. Even in the home front, women are super, what do I call it, superheroes, because I don't think it's easy for anybody, especially women who have families, managing the family, managing the work,
Yes,
managing other things, you know,
all together.
all together. And even for women who are housewives alone, that in itself is a
It's
full-time
a
job.
the full-time job. Yes,
Ensuring
yes,
that your
yes,
family is well
yes.
fed, ensuring that the children go to school when they are supposed to, ensuring that the house is clean when it's supposed to. So it's not only about women who are in the professional career when we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
this, also about women whose full-time jobs is being a housewife. It takes a lot
Yeah.
for them to be able to do that. And then when you now put it side by side with women who are managing both the home front and the work, it's a lot of things. And that's why I say that I think women are just superheroes. Like, I don't know where all that strength comes from, but it's a lot.
Thank you very much. That was a whole lot to take in. So over to you, Verlaine.
Can you just repeat the question, my sister, just to make sure I frame it properly?
So it's generally speaking, what is the role of women in our environment, and how
Mhm.
important is it to mainstream the female gender?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I think our sister Amina has said a lot, and I like the last question she asked. I don't know where all the strength is coming from, but women still carry, and I see the strength in you now as we're discussing. So I think strength, I was reading just before I answer the question, I was reading a book on resilience and how resilience is built through hardships. And I think, unfortunately, as women, particularly as African women in situations of conflict or dire situations, you have no other option but either to break. And when you break, it's terrible. You're on the floor, you're hurting, and it can be very difficult to stand back up. Or you find the strength within yourself to overcome those barriers and to move forward, to build up. But doing so requires a lot of resilience. It requires within you to build a stamina, and to build that muscle, that emotional muscle, to know and to think and to tell yourself, I can do that. I can overcome that challenge. And when I think of that, I'm reminded of a mission I did for work. I joined. We went to Maiduguri in 2017 with the DSG, and we also went to the Lake Chad Basin. And I remember sitting by the lake just to explain on how women's role in environment is significant. I remember just coming and sitting by the lake, and as you know, the lake is shrinking, so there was barely any water. And sitting with our big sisters and mothers and asking, so how do you, and trying to understand the experience, what's your daily life? What do you do? Climate change has the most negative impact on women and communities because those women are the ones who need to access natural resources. So they were showing us the lake is shrinking. So no more water, which means no more fish, which means no more sustainable access to food for family, which means that if there's no sustainable access to food for family, what do the children do? If they're in very young age, they're deprived of food and the consequences are disastrous. If they're in age to look at what can they do, they're going to find ways to support their families, whatever that way is. We have to really think clearly about that. Whatever that way is. If your mom is crying at night because her stomach is empty, and your little brothers and sisters, everyone, what do you do? And I'm not justifying anything. I'm trying to put context into situations to understand how climate change impacts and destroys families and long-term societies. So with that in mind, what we see in terms of women, they're the ones who have access to natural resources. They're the ones who know how to handle family units and keep it all together. And that is a great responsibility. So the role of women in environment and addressing climate change is essential. And I think, as our sister Amina has mentioned, because they play an essential role, not only should they be at the table of decision making, now they barely are. You know, we keep women in on the side and we tell them, okay, so just take care of that and I'll decide. But if there are things that matter to a woman, to women, and then a woman we know in our culture is a community, if you don't take into consideration what is important for these women and for their communities, then you're leaving out a great part of the solution. You're just thinking, that's the way I want to do. And anyway, if I bring her to the table, she's going to talk too much, give me headache, tell me how she wants that and that and that. We don't have time for that. But the problem is if we don't allocate this time, even if it will take 1 hour more, because it takes long, it's hard work to think about what needs to be done. But if we do give a bit of space, a bit of time for that to happen, we save on the longer term, you know. And again, that comes back to the scarcity mindset, to think we don't have time. No, we need to take the time to lay out good foundations, and laying out good foundations, taking the time, is including women in decision-making processes, including women in access to resources, very important, you know, access to resources, financial, natural resources also is very key, and making sure that they're in at the table of decision-making when we're talking about climate policy, climate program, and how do we reassess and build back better, you know, particularly in the context of post-COVID.
Thank you so much, because it's even as I am, I'm learning so much from both of you. So thank you so much. So because of time, I would like to run to my next question. Now, this is going to be focusing on your organization. So what do you do, like within your organization? What do you do, and how exactly have you, or are you ensuring that women challenges the status quo within your organization, based from your organizations? So from you, Amina.
Okay, so young professionals in policy and development. It's a fairly new organization. It's a group of young people who are professionals in different development fields and who are working in both local and international organizations that come together. And we believe that we can tap into the resources that each person brings from their area of expertise in different development areas. So we have members who are professionals, who are experts in the field of healthcare, for example, in the field of governance and democracy, in the field of climate change and environment and all of that. And we do our programs in different phases. We have those that have to do with policy, we have those that have to do with direct outreaches. And in all of this work that we are doing, what we try to be deliberate about is ensuring that women voices are key in all of these engagements that we do. If we are planning for a policy discussion, we try to strike a balance of gender in terms of the speakers that we have, in terms of the recommendations that will be made. We try to make sure that there are particularly directed towards how each of those things affect women and how they affect men. So we're very deliberate about ensuring that women's voices and women's views are amplified in the work that we do. And then personally, I also, on the side, do some other work with young women. And this is particularly driven by my experience from student union in the university. I feel like there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of opportunity that is there in terms of engaging young women in tertiary institutions on leadership and politics. So the National Female Student Association, I play an advisory role to that association. And there's a lot of young women there who are student union leaders as well in their institutions. And so we talk the time and are able to travel to their institutions to engage them directly. I do that as well. And the main purpose is these are people who already have shown interest in politics and leadership. And Nigeria, as we know it, is experiencing a lot of deficit in terms of women's leadership. So
Mm.
how do we begin to encourage these young women, talk to them about mainstream politics, the processes that are involved, educate them about what you need to do in order to join mainstream politics. So discussing topics like how to join a political party, how to register as a member of a political party, what kind of support you would need, what kind of stakeholders you should engage. But while doing this, one of the things I think is important, I'll also try to say, is that we don't try to force it on them as well. Not
Okay.
everybody at the end of the day is going to run for office. Yes, the leadership gap is it's a huge one. I mean, it's very low, it's discouraging, but also making them know that they have a choice. I think that is something that is important. So if you are not thinking about running now, maybe you're thinking about running in the future, there's also a lot of things that you can do in order to support women who are running for office. So you can support them in terms of, supporting their campaign, in terms of their communication, helping them to draw up their strategies. There are many other ways that through which you can engage them. And who knows, perhaps eventually through doing some of this, that would spur their interest to also run for offices in the future. Because the truth of the matter is, it's really sad to see that the number of women in elective positions in Nigeria continues to drop. And then when it comes to
Yeah.
young women, it's even worse. When you
Mm.
talk about young people participation in politics, it's almost like you're talking about young men. When you go to young women, it's almost non-existent. So these conversations are important. These engagements are very important, and I'm happy to see that a lot of organizations are now interested in engaging young women. So you see a lot of young women political school going on. I think that's something that is worthy of note, and I'm happy to see that this is happening, because this is something that I've been advocating for right from the time I graduated from the university. There's a lot of potential, there's a lot of opportunities that exist in terms of engaging young women in politics. There's a lot of support that they can offer. There's a lot of there's a lot that they can bring to the table, and I think that we all have one or two contributions that we can make in our own way. I don't believe in doing things in a big way all the time. I mean, I have a primary job that I do, belong to a lot of organizations, so it's not always easy for me. But I feel from time to time, just do the little that you can
We can do.
about that thing that you're passionate about. It goes a long way, and
Mm.
then
It
someone
goes a
else would
very
take
long
it
way.
and then pay it forward. So yeah.
Mm, yes, pay it forward. Exactly, exactly, exactly. I'm a strong believer of doing things in a very little way, because at the end of the day, like they say, little jobs make that mighty ocean. So it's the small things that actually do matter. Thank you very
Mhm.
much. So over to you, Verlaine. Within your organization, what are the things you're doing to help, change the status quo for women?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. And again, Sister Amina has laid a good foundation for me to come in. You see, so she just said pay it forward. So that's what I'm doing now. I think, the reason why I launched ZARAs Dream a year ago, it was before COVID. It was literally, I think, 2 weeks before COVID.
Wow.
And but it grew really quickly and exponentially. We have over 200 young women, not 200, 2,000 young women, and we have 60 mentors, mentees. And the reason why I decided to do that, to give my time, and I love what our sister Amina mentioned, she's doing a lot of little things. Change,
Mm,
positive change we want to see is not going to happen as a big thing tonight. You wake up and bam, there's a big noise, and everything that you want to see positively in the world happens. It doesn't happen like that. Positive change takes time. It's
yeah.
a marathon. So it's like small step. One, two, one, two. Sometimes you go backwards. Sometimes that's three backwards. You wonder, why am I doing this? But you continue
Yeah.
because you believe in it. And I think that's with that I decided, because I have my own professional life. I work on gender with an amazing team at UN Women, with an amazing leader, Dr. Fumzile Mlamod-Guka, who's a great gender young women champion, and with other amazing women around me. The reason why I was intentional, and I think this is here also very important, the intentionality, thinking about what do I want to do with that, is because as a young woman myself, I faced so many challenges and I could not see a platform in my environment that was addressing those issues and that was bringing young women together in a more sustainable, open solidarity way in which they could believe in their dreams, access to mentors. How do you find your first job? We talk about choosing to challenge. Choosing to challenge is being also independent in the way you carry your life. If you rely on someone, for, I don't know, rent, clothes, food, you always have a helper hand on you. And sometimes the helper hand will slap you or say, I mean, how do you live like that? You can't. But the problem is we don't have the structures to help young women grow and be their own person, because we are our own person. Society integrates us into units. Okay, you're going to be a mother, you're going to be that, etc. And then you can't really move. But it's very important for young women to understand that before integrating any collective, any whole, you need to make sure that you're good within at the individual. Me, like, how do I feel now? What is my dream? What do I want to do? Because your dream, I always say, self-love works for everyone. Once you love yourself, once you have your dreams, it will work for you, but it will always also work for others. Because I hope that your self-love and dreams include others, because if your dreams include just you, they're too small and you're going to end up alone somewhere with your own little dream. So you need to make sure that your dream is big enough to include other people. And here, I congratulate the team of Climate Wednesday, because that's what you're doing. You're having a big dream that includes little dreams of everyone. And so the way that, I decided to come up with ZARAs Dream was exactly that. How do we as young women come all together and in a big bucket put all of our dreams and be in solidarity with each other to make them happen? And how do we, the other element I wanted to target and address was, how do we make sure that you have access to good mentors, because there are bad mentors, and I'm speaking openly. There are bad mentors who are going to plant seeds of doubt, seeds of fear, seeds of distractions into your mind. And I'm sharing that because you may not see it at the beginning. Maybe the person says, no, you shouldn't apply for that, you're not good enough. Or no, you shouldn't apply for that because it's not for women, it's not for young women. Things like that. At the beginning, you don't absorb it. It's very light. But then the seed transforms itself into a tree. The tree becomes a forest. And then you're stuck, you can't move anymore. So very important to surround yourself with positive mentors who build you up and not take you down. And that's what we're doing with ZARAs Dream, making sure that the people who come in to support young women achieve their dreams are good within themselves. Because you can be a bad mentor. So we're looking for people who are good within themselves and can give this good back to people, and particularly young women around themselves. And also addressing opportunities, access to speaking opportunities, access to funding opportunities, access to professional opportunities, all of this, so really ZARAs Dream created a platform where we can just look at how do we continue building up our dreams and not our fears. So that's a bit of what we're doing, and I'm hoping to continue working closely with everyone on this call.
Thank you very much. So you spoke a lot about mentorship, and before that leads you to my next question that is specifically for you. And so considering you're a part of African Women's Leaders Network, so because of this platform, what are the opportunities it has given you in taking strides to ensure the inclusion of women in leadership, and like that they can actually move mountains? And the second question is, what is the role of mentorship in ensuring women raise other women?
Yeah.
Did you get the question?
Yeah, thank you, my sister. I think I want to go beyond just the platform, because this is something I coordinated, and I'm very happy and proud of the work we've done. But I think I want to think bigger. When I say bigger, in terms of how do we relate with each other as women, once we achieve positions of leadership. I think that's something that's very important to think deeply through, meaning that I think our sister Amina touched on it actually just earlier when she talked about keeping the doors open and one of the challenges keeping the doors open depends also on how you deliver. Because as our sister mentioned, if people come and say, oh, well, we had a woman leader and she messed up everything, then it closes the door for other people behind you. So unfortunately, that's not something that's great. But when a woman gets to a position of leadership, whatever that leadership is, and I want to redefine leadership. Leadership is not only a title position. It's not just president of a country or governor or minister or whatever. Leadership is at the beginning, the moment you decide to do something and to rally people around you, you're a leader. Even if you're local leader, even if it's in your class, even if whatever form it takes. Leadership is having a vision and accepting that your vision may be wrong and bringing other people in to build up whatever dreams you have together. Leadership takes collective. And within that, we need to be in solidarity with each other. And, once we get to the spaces, lift other up, nothing that another door is open, it's going to stop with me. I'm the first president of, and then that's it. No, identify young women around you who has the strength, and sometimes you may not see it, but someone may come to you and keep your door open. Something I see often, also people love to keep their door closed. I experience it, and that's why I have an open door policy. My Twitter is open, my LinkedIn. If you want to talk to me and you want to reach out for something, keep your door open. Because by keeping your door open, you're giving back. There's nothing worse than receiving a gift from life and thinking that this gift belongs to you. And I've seen that gift belongs to the universe. Once you put something out, it's not yours anymore. You have a role that you played into doing that, but this is not yours. It's like ZARA's Dream. It's not mine. I just created something because I saw a need, but it belongs as much to Jessica, to Agostina, to Christelle, to Cindy, to whoever is in it. This is, and I think this is how we need to see things. And that also helps us rethink leadership, for instance, not overstaying positions. This is my seat. I like this seat. It's good. It's warm. It's hot. I'm not going to move. No. Life, there's so many things, many possibilities. Move, live. Someone else can try, and as a sister Amina said, pay it forward. So I think that's on that for leadership. And our leadership, I think as women, I don't want to generalize, but we're usually more nurturing, more compassionate, because we also carry the seeds of life within us. That's a reality. I don't want to make, everyone has their own personalities, but what I've experienced, usually there's a more nurturing aspect. So let's tap into that. How do we bring our own type of leadership to the table that is not necessarily masculine or men? And that's fine. That's our type of leadership. And when it comes to mentorship, I think, as I mentioned just before, you need to really surround yourself with good mentors, because they'll make or break you. And as I said, sometimes it's silent. You don't see it. It's little by little drops. And one day you wake up and you're not the same person anymore. Something changed, either on the positive side, which is excellent, and you continue, or on the other spectrum where like, who is that person? I don't know that person, and I don't like what I'm seeing. And when you get to that stage of looking in the mirror and looking within yourself and thinking, I don't like what I'm seeing, you need to pause. You need to stay still for a moment and just think, how can I change that? Mm-hmm. Who can I reach out to share that this is not working? And how can I change within myself and change their environment, to then be able to move forward? I think those are things to keep in mind, particularly for young people as we enter particularly the professional world, our personal lives also, thinking about all of that and always reassessing. Where am I now in my life? What I'm doing, is that good? If yes, continue. If no, reassess and change what needs to be changed.
Thank you so much. That was a lot to take in, and I definitely did learn a lot from you. So now moving on to my next question, which is particularly for Amina. So I know you work, or you're a part of the young professionals in policy and development. Now, this is going to be specific to a particular policy in New Zealand. So how exactly does a policy like paid leave after miscarriage for couples, women especially, that has just passed in that has just been passed in New Zealand, how exactly does it affect social cultural milieu? Like, does it have any effect on what can be, or is it actually a changing phenomenon that other countries can take a lead from?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I agree with you that it's a changing phenomenon that other countries can have a lot to learn from. You know, every time I see a new policy, especially, you know, in New Zealand, I admire Jacinda a lot. You know, I see her sometimes and I just feel like, oh, how I wish I could just intern with her for some time. She seems to me as a definition of what true leadership should be. Now, if you look at Nigeria, for example, and maybe I should relate this particularly to northern Nigeria, where I grew up, at a time, people did not even believe that there's anything like postpartum depression, for example. People did not even believe that that was a thing, that that is something that could actually happen to someone. So when women experience these things after childbirth, it would be attributed to a lot of things. People could tell you, oh, just pray, you would feel better, or just maybe go stay with your family for a bit, you'll feel better. Because people did not see it as a thing. People did not think that it was something that important. But a lot of women have suffered from the society not taking issues like that seriously and just putting it on the side and asking them to go take care of themselves, or they'll go pray about it and they'll feel better, which is ironical because even in, you know, in many religions, people are encouraged to seek knowledge, and seeking knowledge means that if there's something wrong with you, you try to find out exactly why you're feeling that way and try to get a solution that would help you feel better. So a policy like that that was passed in New Zealand, I think it's absolutely important. A lot of people, I had a few side conversations with some people, and some of them felt like, then why does the man need that leave as well, since it's the woman who, you know, has experienced that? And I think it's important for both of them, right? Because they have both lost something that would have been for both of them. And the way that would affect the mother may be different from how it will affect the husband. But at the end of the day, it's still two people who are involved in this.
Yeah.
And I think policies like that are things that a lot of countries should actually learn from, especially in Africa. We take too many things for granted.
Granted.
So many things happen that we just say, oh, go and pray about it. Prayer is not always going to solve everything. Prayer is
Yeah.
good. Yes, we should pray, but we should also be deliberate about trying to solve the challenges that we face. And one other thing that comes to my mind, especially when you relate to the Nigerian context, is not always about the policy, it's about the implementation, right? Because we also have a system where, for example, if a law is passed at the National Assembly, it has to be domesticated at the state houses of assembly. So let's assume, for example, Nigeria decides to, you know, emulate this law that has been passed in New Zealand, and it's passed in the National Assembly, and then now the state houses of assembly have to domesticate the law before it can apply to the citizens in that state. And a state house of assembly refuses to do it, maybe because they don't think it's that big of a deal. So they just, they don't pass it and nothing happens. What it means is that you cannot enforce it within that particular jurisdiction. So at the end of the day, what progress really have we made? If you look at many laws in the country that has been passed at the national level, you will see that they still have not been passed at the state levels. The Violence Against Person Prohibition Act, for example, I think only about 8 states, if I'm correct, have domesticated that law. So if the penalty for someone who commits assault is 2 years in prison, and somebody assaults somebody in a state where it has not been domesticated, it means that you cannot apply that law. So at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about passing the law. It's about the manner in which the processes are. So if it's passed at the national level, it hasn't been domesticated at the state, so you cannot enforce that law. So at the end of the day, we still have that problem lingering. So I really think that New Zealand is that country that is setting the pace for a whole lot of, is a country that many other countries should look forward to in terms of quality leadership, and leadership that is deliberate about making sure that the welfare of its citizens is priority. I mean, I say this with no bias or anything. I'm an African. I love Africa, but I want Africa to do better. I want our leaders to do better. I want them to be more deliberate. I want them to be more strategic. I don't want all this generalization. It's too much talk and no action. But these are other countries that are doing more of the action than talking. You probably
Yeah.
won't even hear so much about the legislation. You would just see that they have passed this law and they are going to enforce
Mm,
it. But in Nigeria, you will see a lot of laws. Okay, today the House or the Senate has had the first reading, second reading, they've done this, they've done that. Before the law is eventually passed, it takes years.
yes, it takes a
And then
very
when the
long
law is
time.
passed again, you are waiting for the states to domesticate the law. And then at the end of the day, some of the states will not domesticate this law. So what exactly have we gotten at the end of the day? It's very frustrating. But I think that, yeah, that it's actually something that a whole lot of countries can tap into and they can learn a lot from. And it's an opportunity for us to do better. Really, we need to do better.
Thank you very much. Just to back up that question, do you believe that some of the reasons why that law was made was because of the prime minister that they have being female?
Nah, I don't think it's because she's female. I think it's because she is someone who has a vision. I think she knows exactly what she wants to do. She knows exactly how she wants her citizens to feel. She is a leader who is empathic. She knows exactly what she wants to do in terms of ensuring that her citizens are safe, that they are comfortable, that they have access to opportunities, that they have access to whatever they need. I don't think it's because she's female. That's a very, I don't agree with that. I just think she's a leader who has a vision and who is
Mm-hmm.
strategic and deliberate about making sure that that vision becomes a
Is
reality.
achieved.
That's what I think.
Thank you. That's a whole lot to take in. Thank you so much. So I'm going to try and wrap this up. So now
Mhm.
we're going to move on to another question, which is for both of you. So now we're going to the educational aspect. On education, statistics show that more females are out of school, and also because of the pandemic, those who have been privileged to get an education may not be able to return to school. So how then can we ensure that they become educated, because education plays a huge role in knowing one's right. Because without education, a lot of people do not actually know their rights. So how exactly do we ensure that these students, especially female, get back to school? So who would like to take the plunge here? Anyone?
Okay, let me just go ahead. I think that I think it was UNESCO statistics for was it 2020 that Nigeria has the highest number of out of school children in the world. Very sad, very heartbreaking, and majority of these out of school children are girls.
Yeah.
So this we're talking about figures that are in millions. These figures are in millions. It's not just a few number of girls in a place who have no access to education. Then you say, oh, let's do a quick fundraiser for them and do something for them. No, we're talking about huge numbers in millions. And what that means is that it's going to take a lot of deliberate, strategic effort in order to address a challenge like this one. So it's not something that is left for just the government alone.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, most of it should be for the government because that's the reason why we elected you in the first place, right? But there also has to be a good level of support from other actors as well. I'm talking about civil society, I'm talking about international organizations, I'm talking about communities themselves. I believe in local solutions a lot. And I think that in terms of addressing this challenge, particularly just when we're talking about education, it's important to also incorporate the local communities, have their voices. What do they think about what the solutions would be? Um, in the first place, we had a lot of girls who did not have access to education, and then coupled with the COVID-19 pandemic, it became even worse. So there's a lot that needs to be done. The government needs to be deliberate. I'm not talking about the government at the federal level only. I'm talking about state governments as well. I'm talking about houses of assemblies as well. I'm talking about local government chairpersons as well. Because at the end of the day, people voted you into these offices for a reason. So it's not enough for when a particular issue is being discussed, and then we put the whole responsibility on the federal government. The federal government has a role to play. The state government has a role to play. The legislature has a role to play. The communities have a role to play. Civil society organizations. But then we can't always place the burden on civil society organizations because they are also limited by a lot of factors.
Yeah.
They're limited by funding, they're limited by a lot of things. So, how about we think more about partnerships and collaboration, right? Civil society organizations are able to do a lot of the aspect of, doing the surveys, doing recommendations. How about we partner? There's more partnership between civil society organizations, communities, and government as well, so that we are not working in silos. while addressing an issue that affects all of us. If one girl is not going to school in one community, I feel bad because I am fortunate enough to have access to education. And in so many ways, that is one of the factors that has made me to get to the level that I am today. So if another girl is being denied that opportunity and doesn't have that aspect, it affects me and it makes me feel bad. And in this case, we're talking about millions. So it's a
Yeah.
lot that needs to be done in terms of collaboration, in terms of deliberate steps by government, by civil society, by communities, by everyone who has something to offer needs to come to the table, and we need to provide a solution to this. I think we've done enough on the talking. I think we need to collaborate more and actually do the talk. Yeah, do the talk, do the action. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much. So over to you, Verlaine.
Thank you so much. I think our sister has laid it out. I just want to build on the last point, which is about action. The
Yeah.
problem we have, I mean, documents are very important because they're the
Yeah.
foundation for us to move forward. But we can fall into what I call the self-congratulatory tap, meaning, we tap ourselves because we adopted beautiful documents, we clap our hands
Mhm.
because we adopted beautiful documents. But then what?
What happened?
How does it change the life of a woman who, Sister Amina gave the example of gender-based violence assault? How do we change the life of a woman who's sitting, I don't know, somewhere and doesn't have that law translated for her into actions?
Mhm.
And I think it takes effort, as Sister mentioned it. It takes all different stakeholders to come together and people in positions of leadership to also, you know, I mentioned reassess, but how do I deliver? And I know it's hard. Being in position of leadership is hard. You get pulled from all angles. I want this, I don't want this, we should do this, we shouldn't do this. Yes, it is. But that's why you surround yourself with people who can help you deliver. I think we need to also reassess what leadership means, culturally for us. Leadership is not one person. We
Mhm.
love to think that leadership is, the Messiah, one person who fell from the sky and that person is going to deliver everything for us. It's impossible. We live in households. Can you take all the responsibilities of the 5 people in your house? You can't.
Yeah.
It's hard. So now imagine having to take responsibilities for a whole city, a whole state, a whole
Mhm.
country. So my take is it takes collective to be able to do that. It takes responsibilization of each individual, And how do we get to that responsibilization? Of course, it takes great leadership, but it takes communication. How do you communicate to your fellow brothers and sisters that this is also your responsibility? You are responsible to make that happen. We have this document. You need to make sure that this document is implemented. And it doesn't have to be through big words, it can be through engagement. How does it change your life positively? Because we need to show people what they can gain. How would those laws or those documents make their lives better? I think it's really engaging and engaging and engaging. Those would be really the 3 words of how we can take it forward through action, but through meaningful engagement, engaging, and responsibilizing everyone. And also stop that we also change our mindset, as I mentioned, to think that change comes through one person. It doesn't. It never does. It takes people. It takes movement for things to shake. It's
Happen.
like, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much again. And just to, because you've spoken about one of the questions I was going to ask you, the role of government, NGOs, CSOs, and even the individuals themselves, meaning that everybody has is more of all hands on deck. It's not just left to one person to take on this conversation or to take the action for what we're actually pursuing. So just to have the final question, which is on balancing the skills, how do we ensure that in as much as we're pursuing and we're choosing to challenge, we do not go about it the wrong way. We have to balance the skills. What are the ways in which we can balance the skills? And how do we also ensure that women's rights become everybody's priority, everybody's right, not just women are fighting for this right? So anybody can choose to start.
Okay, Verlaine, do you want to go?
Okay, I'll go. Thank you so much. I think, yeah, I talked about the collective. We need to really change mindsets. I think the change of the 21st century is going to be built by people who can learn, unlearn whatever is bad that they learned, and learn again.
Mm.
The old way of doing business, as I would say, is gone. The way, like the 1994 leadership style, forget it. No. We're in 2021. What does it mean, 2021? 2021 means social media. Means that with a hashtag, you can create a world movement. With a hashtag, you can bring social issues to the table. You can rally people. You can get different voices that you may not be able to hear otherwise. 1994, none of that. You have a challenge. You have problems. One person is responsible. They're very difficult to rally people like we're doing now around, meaningful advocacy, meaningful positive change. Where in 2021, it takes, I have a phone in, we all have phones within the hour, the three of us can rally, I don't know, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people to build whatever change we want to build. And that's power. And why am I sharing that? I'm sharing that because the 21st century power type, as I mentioned, is a change of mindset, of learning, unlearning, and relearning. This is what this is what our best asset is going to be: knowledge, information. And we see it. I mean, we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We're talking about
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, and we're seeing in Africa, Nigeria is a big hub for innovations and new technologies. All the big companies are coming and looking at what Nigerian young people are doing, young women and men. So this is the power of the 21st century. So really we're assessing our mindsets, our access to information, and by the grace of life, stopping for us, all of us, to think that we are the only leaders. We need to make sure that whenever we're sitting at a table, and as Sister Amina mentioned it at the beginning, one woman is not enough. When we have these decision-making processes to take, but we brought her in. No, because decision-making processes are unfair. They're going to rally on their side, not share information with you, decide whatever they want to cook, come with you with already made dish, and then say, this is the dish we made, just sign here. And so if you're not happy, who do you rally with? Because you're alone. At least if you have fellow sisters, you can sit down and say, okay, this is what they cooked. What do you think? And how do we adjust the recipe? How do we bring a recipe that works for everyone? So I think that's something that we need to look out for each other, to be our keepers, brothers keepers, sisters keepers. When you're sitting at a table, look around. If you see that our sisters are missing, make sure that you pick up your phone and you call the people who need to come. If you see that certain people are missing, let's make sure that we include each other and we discuss. We mentioned it before. It's not easy. It takes longer. It's hard because sometimes you disagree. You don't like what the person is saying. But it doesn't matter because you need to hear it. And as you know, in our culture, it's very difficult to challenge, particularly when there's a dominant discussion. It's very difficult to challenge and to bring a new idea. We need to be comfortable to be challenged. That's why choosing to challenge is also accepting that we will be challenged. And if you cannot accept that, you're back in 1994, and you're back into where the world stopped, like 30 years ago almost. And as I mentioned, we're in 2021. People are choosing to challenge, so be ready to be challenged too. Look out for the people who are missing at the table, and make sure that we're inclusive. I think that would be my end thoughts.
Thank you very much.
So I think Verlaine pretty much wrapped everything up, and I particularly picked a line from what she had said, about getting a recipe that works for everyone. I think that while we are trying to, continue to do the work that we do, and we acknowledge the fact that different stakeholders have different roles that they need to play, it's important that we see, the strength in what each person has to offer, or each stakeholder, or each entity, and how we can harness all of the strengths that they bring into preferring solutions. I think it's also important to be objective about how we see issues. And sometimes, it's not really much if you try to explain why you're advocating for a particular thing to people, because sometimes, many times actually, I get comments like, why are you always advocating for women? Some of these things that you're talking about also affect men, like the time when we were really up about talking about gender-based violence and all that, and a good friend of mine said, why are you always talking about women? Men also get abused, men get harassed and all of that. And I say that, of course, this happens to men as well. But when you look at the statistics, right? When you look at the numbers, when you compare the figures, women are more at the receiving end than men. So what we are saying is not that men should completely be put away, that this doesn't affect them in any way. But we are saying that look at the numbers. There's a particular gender that is more affected than the other in terms of, and that's why we have to continue to raise our voices about this particular issue. And mostly because these are issues that have not been addressed for a long period of time. And that's why we need to continue to put in that pressure. And while we're trying to do that as well, we should also try to bring in the men as allies as well. Because it's at the end of the day, it's not a war, it's a win-win situation for everyone. When things are better for women, things are better for the entire community and better for the world. Uh, um, as a whole. So I think that's something that is very important. We need to be very deliberate. And in our little communities, in our little circles, we have to try as much as possible to see that we encourage people to to play the role that they can play in terms of trying to make our communities better. Different stakeholders have different roles that they would play. It could be as little as just raising awareness amongst a group of friends and telling them that no, when you use certain comments to a lady, it's disrespectful, it's not appropriate. It could be as small as correcting someone for a word that they have used, which is not appropriate, which is not correct. And then it could also be on the large scale. Like I said, it's the little things that we do in our little spaces at the end of the day that would add up something that would be worthy of celebrating. So at the same time, also, I think that leadership, especially in Africa, needs to be more deliberate, it needs to be more strategic, and we need to listen more to women. Women have a lot to offer, and a lot of these challenges affect women in a different way from how they affect men. So I think our leaders need to listen more. We need to open up the conversations more. We need to have more women at the table and through this discussion from me.
Thank you so much, Amina and Verlaine. It was a pleasure having you. I really did learn a lot from you both. And this brings us to the end of today's topic. But if you have any final words in a minute or two, please, you can, give us a 1 minute final word for our audience today.
Thank you so
So,
much.
Verlaine.
Amina, go ahead, sis.
Okay.
Okay, I think the final words for me would be that we need to keep supporting each other. We need to keep opening up the spaces as much as we can. It doesn't matter if the lady is from your state or from your country, as long as when one woman succeeds anywhere, it's
Everybody
also
will
a win
benefit.
for me, and it's a win for women in all other places. So I think it's important for us to continue to support ourselves, continue to push each other to be better. And thank you so much, Verlaine, for all the work that you do, for everything that you do. I appreciate it, and I admire you a lot. And you as well, Duro. It's not easy doing all of this, and particularly with the
Thank
challenges that
you.
we face every day. But like I
Yes,
said,
yes,
we must continue to push each other to be better, and we must continue to
yes.
support one another. So that's words for me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amina. Thank you so much, my sister. It was really, I mean, such a powerful discussion we had. And I myself learned a lot from both of you. And I think the last words I'd like to give is um, it doesn't take a title to be a leader. I think this is something we need to remove. And we've seen it from both of your sisters. You didn't come with your title hats. You came as yourself, as young women wanting to build change. And so that's something I'd like to leave with the audience. Change always starts with you. It always starts
Yes.
now. And young women are not waiting to take on new challenges. As you can see, we're taking it. And we're not going to let anyone to stop us. You know, as we say in the US, we shall not be moved. We're going to continue. So I wish
Yes.
everyone a beautiful, blessed end of the week. My sisters, were so good to
Yes.
connect, to see you.
Same here.
And we continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very everybody for listening. And this brings us to the end of today's program. Thank you. Goodbye.